Good morning, everyone. Happy vibes. This is your Good Morning Minute. I am Angelina, and I'm here with Julie, and she'll introduce herself momentarily. I want to let you know that we are talking today about rising from the ashes, how one woman overcame adversity to achieve success. So, Julie, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, thank you. I'm super excited to be here, and it was a pleasure meeting you a few days ago. So I think we're kindred spirits, so I'm happy to be here. Okay, so I live in Virginia. I'm a Pennsylvania native, and I say that because I always joke that I'm a mountain girl. I grew up in the mountains, nestled in the Allegheny. My town was nestled in the Allegheny Forest, Allegheny Mountains, and once a mountain girl, always a mountain girl, I say. So even though I'm in Virginia, my heart is always in Pennsylvania, and I still have a lot of really wonderful people there, including my family and friends. So that's where I grew up. I live with my husband of 25 plus years, who's super supportive of all my crazy endeavors, which I couldn't be more grateful for because that's important, right? And I've had a few crazy endeavors. And we have two wonderful children that no longer live in our house because we're empty nesters. But we do marvel, we miss them terribly, but we do marvel at what wonderful human beings are working on becoming.
Mhm.
So that really helps. I think everybody and being empty nesters is really watching your children grow up. So, and we've replaced them with furry paws. We have two cats that we just love. They keep us
Oh,
company. They're older cats, but they keep us company. So that's a little bit about me. I'm also the owner of Empowering Life Coaching and Consulting LLC. Um, my big venture this year has been to embark upon a co-author journey with the Les Brown, who I adore and have followed for years. So I'm super excited that that book should be released within the next month. And my contribution is really my story. It's just really fleshing out how it all came about and how I've come full circle. The story's called Coming Full Square, and who I am today in my life coaching business. So yeah, that's a little bit about me, Angelina.
awesome. I know when we spoke earlier, Les Brown, and that was someone that really prompted my growth journey. And I loved his story. I loved his background, and I just really connect because it's real. And I think that's the idea of interviewing different women from different places because at sometimes in our journey we run into just different dynamics that may have set us back, or we may just take a breath, like a pause, and we don't overcome those things. We kind of get stuck in those situations. And so when we're talking about rising from the ashes, I mean, that's kind of what it is. It's recognizing and building some type of self-awareness where you're like, okay, enough's enough. I need to get out of the muck of all these things. And
Yes.
when I do, it's that phoenix, right? It's that rebirth of who you want to become and the strength that you pull from the story. So it's like just coming up. I just envisioned that just more powerful and more empowered. What were some of the challenges or adversities that you faced in your story?
Oh, I had a few. Just like many women, just like you said. And I love your title, Rising Above the Ashes, because I had some ashes. So my story really begins December 29th, decades ago, where we had a knock on the door about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I remember vividly, these emotionally charged situations we remember vividly. And I remember my mom yelling, "Don't answer that, don't answer that." And I was like, I was a 17-year-old and kind of a snotty 17-year-old. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're waking me up from a cold sleep. I want to get this over with. Who's knocking at our door? And we woke up to police officer standing there and saying, "I'm sorry to tell you, your son has passed away. There was a triple fatality car accident." And the crazy thing is, Angelina, my mother was having a dream that I don't know if it was, I can't recall if it was her son or her children, because there were three of us, were
Mhm.
drowning. So it was like she was being sent a message that this was happening, and there
Mhm.
was some water involved. It was, like I said, a triple fatality car accident where the car flipped over. And so it was very confusing. I'm standing there, and then, of course, she does get up and joins me, and the police officer broke the news, and it was just like falling from the sky. Like ashes right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
just my mom and I at the door because she was a single mother at that point in her life. And the trauma, I was 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But to make it even worse was it was a very small town. My one of my very best friends from middle school, high school, her brother was driving the car because there was a lot of us that were all good friends. You know, they had siblings, so I attached to the siblings. We were all really good friends in a small town.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just what? So I had a lot to deal with and a lot to process. And, I figured, we all kind of figured that alcohol was involved, 20-year-olds crossing the Pennsylvania New York border,
Mm-hmm.
drinking, and come to find out years later that the fight ensued and they never really even went into the bar. So that was like news to me that I found out after the fact. But at the time, you can imagine one of my best friend's brothers driving the car. There's all these other people involved, kids that I was going to school with. Some of them I was friends with because there was four guys in the car. So they have siblings that I knew. So it was just really, really packed with trauma. And so we got through that. It was very, very challenging. We went back to school, and I'll never forget the first day back to school, very different than today's world. There weren't any guidance counselors meeting any of us at the door. There
Yeah.
weren't any teachers saying, if you need to talk, I'm here. We just went to class, sit down, open up your book. Okay, I guess we just carry on.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
my family was very traumatized. So it wasn't like we really talked about it too much. You just carried on. And I was really fortunate to have a really, really close knit group of friends. So we all just kind of carried on. But there was a couple pivotal moments. One that year, a couple months later, when the driver's education teacher put on a drunk driving movie. And I'm sitting there and he never excused me,
Oh,
never cut.
wow. Yeah.
And Angela, I got up and I walked out. Now,
Uh-huh.
I skipped a lot of school, but I wasn't one to be so aggressive that I would just stand up and walk out of class. And I did
Mm-hmm.
that. I sent a message at, this is not okay. If you're
Mm-hmm.
going to be this cold, I'm not staying. It was
Mm-hmm.
really brutal. And so that was one of the things that happened my senior year on top of everything else. No apology, no nothing. I was like, so this really just isn't all that important to people. Like it was just stunning as a 17-year-old to be going through this. And
Yeah.
so then the next part of it was I was sitting in the my guidance counselor's office, Mr. King, and I went to get my college application. And he uttered 5 words to me that crushed my soul even more. And he said, "You are not college material."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a plan B. There was no other option in my mind. I was going to college.
Mm-hmm.
College was important to me for several reasons. One was that my brother had talked about going to college. I wanted to honor what he didn't have the opportunity to do. My direct parent, my grandmother had gone, but my parents hadn't gone. They were, laborers. I wanted to be one of the first of my, with my parents to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there were some generational patterns that I wanted to break. Collectively, my parents had been divorced together 5 times. So I kind of wanted to break the working as a laborer, just above minimum wage, feeling like there was never enough money. I wanted to find success. And I felt like I was never enough. Now, people around me would have never known that because I had a really good facade. But, that feeling of growing up, we talked about this a little bit when we spoke, before
Mm-hmm.
this podcast, that feeling that we have when there may not seem to be enough, our self esteem, our self worth, all that was in the tank for me.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, 17 years old. I've lost my brother. It's very traumatic. I'm being told I'm not college material. And there's some generational patterns I want to break. And I don't feel like I'm ever enough. So there were some ashes,
Mm-hmm.
in my
Mm-hmm.
mind. And so I was really, really, really blessed that I had a grandmother who I would say my beloved grandmother who had
Mm-hmm.
gone to college. And this story is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Her mother had died when she was age 3. Her father went on to raise 7 kids in rural America. Remember, I grew up in the hills of
Uh-huh.
Pennsylvania as
Yeah.
a farmer by himself. Now,
Wow.
siblings helped raise siblings, but nonetheless, he was a farmer, raised these kids by himself. And I wish I knew the story. I don't know how my grandmother found the resources to be able to do it. But during the Great Depression, she took a train to Penn State University. It was known as Penn State Teachers College at the time to earn a
Mhm.
4-year degree
Wow.
by herself.
Uh-huh.
Tell the stories of travel and train. And then she did go on to work as a teacher for a while. And it was like we had this pact ever since I was a little girl. I was going to follow her footprints. There was no if, and, or buts. So she became my motivational factor, my inspiration. I was like, oh no, I need to follow her. So what happened was my guidance counselor gave me one option. The option was to go be a Burger King manager because I worked at the fast food restaurant. And I
Mhm.
was a hard worker. I was probably pretty good at my job, but all my friends worked there and we had the time of our life. And it wasn't anything that, was ever on my radar to ever do.
Mhm.
So in my desperation, I went and I talked to the Burger King manager, and that was a pivotal point. Again, emotionally charged. I still remember the day. I can
Mhm.
remember how the sky looked. I can
Mhm.
remember the parking lot. I can remember the restaurant over here, the fast food restaurant. I remember the creek that ran through
Mhm.
and him saying to me, "Oh, Julie, we would love to have you. You can start training while you're still in high school."
Wow. Wow. And it's amazing because those pivotal moments do tend to be very memorable, like vivid memories. I know for myself included. Uh, and it's almost that point where you could have said, it's almost the fork at the road. I have two choices to make here. Right?
Yes.
I had two choices. So tell me, okay, so how is it impacting you right now? You've got this decision to make. So what do you do?
So I dug deep. I wallowed in it for a couple of weeks, but I had that conversation with the manager,
Uh-huh.
and it crushed my soul even more. Ashes. My soul is just getting
Mm-hmm.
crushed. All these
Mm-hmm.
things are happening. But I also had a very close knit group of friends, as I said, and they all had their plans. And I had a lot of FOMO. I was not going to be left behind.
Right. Okay.
I was hungry, as Les Brown says, you have to be hungry. I was hungry for
Mm-hmm.
more. And I feel really blessed at the age of 17 that I took the road that was hard because I knew in my soul I could not be left behind. I could not sacrifice who I was as a person and say, okay, that's my only option. So I dug super deep. I talked to my grandmother. I walked into the guidance counselor's office. I sidestepped Mr. King and I just asked for an application. I had no idea if I would be accepted. I had no idea where the money would come from because, again,
Mm-hmm.
I said my mom was divorced at that time. I remember her calling me and saying, or telling me, we didn't have cell phones then, before I left for work, we need some milk or bread, stop and get it on your way. So I would use my money. We were just about broke, single mom working just
Uh-huh.
about minimum wage job. How was I ever going to fund this? So I dug deep and we didn't have internet then. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I don't know. I don't know. Somehow we worked it out. And I'm sure I used the guidance office to get me, some financial aid information. And we worked it out. And I walked on campus. I was accepted
Wow.
conditionally because on paper, Mr. King wasn't totally wrong. I missed a
Mm-hmm.
lot of school. I was a life of the party. I was a party girl. And my SATs were a total embarrassment. I won't even tell you what my score was, and I won't tell you how many days I missed. But
Uh-huh.
that was my identity. That was my coping back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I walked on campus, accepted conditionally, had to be in good academic standing by the end of the semester, I had all that inside of me, and I had all the voices inside of me. Not good enough, lack of self esteem, lack of
Mm-hmm.
self worth. There
Wow.
was a lot of conflict going on.
Oh my gosh. And I can just imagine because, just coming from the environment that you're exposed to as a child and understanding like, oh, that is just the norm for me. That's
Yeah.
the expectation, right? But then you have this angel in a grandmother that's like, no, it can be so much more. And so I see that motivation. I see that support system there for you. What other strengths did you pull from? Because I mean, you're having to do just like an internal battle within yourself. Like, no, I have this vision. I'm going to do it. I don't care what the past says about me. I can do this. but you're still conflicting within yourself this, I don't know,
Yes.
girl, you're not worthy. I don't know.
Yes.
So how do you find the strength to continue?
That's a great question. My why was huge.
Okay.
I did not. One of my biggest strengths was I refused, and I literally mean I refused to think and entertain the idea that going back home was my best option.
Mm,
Like I said, all my high school years were amazing with my friends, but they all had their post plans. Either were married or they went off to college. And when I would go home for a visit, it was great seeing my family, it was great seeing my mom, but it wasn't the same. And I knew that my only other option, as was presented to me, was to go be a Burger King manager, work a minimum wage job. And I did not want that. And I had also worked at a factory. It was called Blair. And they made
uh-huh.
clothing that my mom worked at the summer before I went to college. And it was like assembly line work. So my
Mm.
choices were assembly line work or going back to Burger King. And I drew on strength that when I look at today took a tremendous amount of courage, but my why was so big that I just couldn't fathom what those other options were.
Oh,
And
and
then I
that,
remember,
go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
oh, you're good. And I remember getting a letter to my sweet grandma. And I was like, okay, she believes in me because we don't believe in ourselves. What can happen? We find people that borrow their belief. We can find people that believe in us more than we believe in ourselves.
Mm,
And
mhm.
my college advisor believed in me. I had several meetings with him throughout that semester. He says, okay, you're doing fine. Keep going. Okay. Okay. Well, one more week and then the next week and the next week. I just took it one day at a time. And in December, I sat in front of him and he said, congratulations, you're a fully enrolled student.
Wow. And
So,
I love that it was your why was just too big to not to
yeah,
deny. You didn't
yeah,
want any, you were not going to settle. I'm not going to
yeah.
settle for anything less. I'm not going to settle for the good enough. I want the great. I want the better than, right? And man, that had to have changed some internal beliefs for yourself when you heard that news.
Yes, yes.
So yeah, and so kind of going into that, you're starting to believe it in yourself and that you can do this. You've got this great news. What are others saying around you? I know you have a strong support system within your grandmother, but who else starts coming along and saying, okay, I see you?
Well, it was all this, it was as if the not enough was starting to internally change.
Hmm.
And I had close friends that had gone to their own colleges. So all of a sudden it was like I could kind of match up and share their college experience to my college experience. We would visit one another sometimes. It was like magic. All of a sudden I had these internal beliefs that, wow, there's some shifts happening. I am enough. I do
Mm.
matter. I can
Hmm.
go to college. I can earn a 4 year degree. So yes, change your story, change your life. Tony Robbins. I didn't
Yes.
coin that phrase, right?
Yes, yes, very true. Man,
Yes.
and it's almost like what I'm hearing in your story of this evolution of Julie is I had to believe it first before I could start seeing it. And then once it starts manifesting into reality, then others are starting to take notice and you're connecting. So now you're connecting with those that
Yes.
are on that same road path to success and you're starting to build this framework of supporters outside of just your grandmother. What was your mother and your family saying? Because I know that your mother's working, she's single, and she's back here. So what are they telling you?
My mother was extremely proud of me, and I'm proud to say that.
Hmm.
She never held me back. So, funny story about her. When I was accepted, she came running in. I'll never forget it. It's so funny to think about now.
Okay.
Literally, like into Burger King, waving this manila folder. And I'm looking at her thinking, no, please, please. She's not doing it. I'm 17 years old. All my friends are working. I'm thinking, no, that's not my mother. And she comes up to me. She goes, you did it. You did it. You did it. I'm thinking, what are you talking about? I thought she had lost it. And I intuitively kind of knew. And she said, you got accepted. You got accepted. And so she was always my cheerleader. She was always very proud of me. And we kind of worked together to make it happen. And she still, she didn't know that path. That path wasn't for her, but man, she has been one of my main supporters along the way.
Mm.
So my grandma was my role model because she had done it and she taught me it's possible. But my mother was really a cheerleader along the way and very proud of me when I graduated from the undergrad and then I went on to grad school. And she was always there cheering me on front and center.
That is beautiful. That is so
Yeah.
beautiful. And so, okay, so you have this whole transformation of the mind, you're believing in yourself. Were there any other pivotal moments that just kind of kept you going in the path? I mean, you're gonna write a book with Les Brown, man. Like I hear that. And so, like, how do we get there? What else happens?
Well, I don't want to sugarcoat it and say it was always easy. I had
Mm-hmm.
a lot of demons in my head. I had a lot of old stories. I had about a lot of old tapes running. But
Mm-hmm.
I was a social work major and I went on to get my master's in counseling psychology. So I'd always worked in kind of that human services field and I was extremely drawn to the psychology world. So I became a master of the greats. And back then we didn't have our phones to sit and listen to things and we didn't have the internet, but we had books and I had lots and lots of books that I would read. And I really tried to internalize things that I was learning. So I feel really blessed that I had that foundation that really helped me along the way. But, when new ventures come up, the old tapes can come up, the old stories can come up.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest with you, Angelina, it's only probably been in the last 5, 10 years where I feel like I've really, really, really broken through. And don't subscribe to any of that old stuff anymore. It can still rear its ugly head. And I'm like, oh no, stop. That's not who I am today. But sometimes those things can follow us for a whole entire life. But we have to learn to reprogram, change our story, change our life, and recognize when all that stuff is rearing its head to say, oh no, that's not who I am today. That's old.
Mm-hmm.
Old tapes, old patterns, old generational stuff that I'm not going to entertain. So a pivotal point was about 10 years after I graduated from the undergrad program. Um, I was offered the opportunity to go to grad school. Oh no, I'm not reliving that. I know what I went through to get there. I know those old tapes. I know what I walked
Mm-hmm.
onto campus with. But I was working full time. I had grown a lot through the years, like you were saying, Angelina.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a buddy to do it with, and I said, okay, I can do it one step at a time. And this is my mantra today. Because I can get overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I take it one step at a time. So I took it one class at a time. I did it over 5 years
Mm-hmm.
and I worked full time. And it was hard. It was hard.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. What I've learned is when we go through these really big pain points and we push through them, we build emotional stamina, emotional strength that we don't even realize sometimes. And that emotional resiliency we can draw upon. So that's really the strength that I've been able to draw upon is all those young years breaking through it, changing my story, but then also tapping into the emotional resiliency that we have along the way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We have to
And you,
build that.
yeah, and you do build that you over time. And I think that's almost a pivoting moment in itself because every adversity you face and you overcome, every challenge that you successfully push through, it does build resilience. It does show you a little bit more about you and the strengths that you hold within yourself. And so, I mean, you've got all this going on, and I love the fact that you're hitting it one step at a time. Like I didn't want to just jump into the pool and just go for it. I took it one step at a time because it sounds like you knew enough about yourself that I'm going to do it this way because that's what works for me. And I think that's important to know that it may look different for other people, but you can still get there if you
Yes.
hold that vision, if you hold the vision. So, I mean, okay, you've got all this going on. What lessons did you learn about yourself through all of this experiences?
Well, that is a great question. And I'm going to tap into my inner Les Brown for this because I didn't intuitively think about these things as I was going through everything, especially at the age of 17, without, the plethora of, the internet superhighway that we have now and all the
Mhm.
knowledge base. But when I look back, Angelina, these key things that Les Brown teaches were my lessons, and I teach these today in my life coaching program. So I'm really hoping that I add some value to your listeners as I talk about these, because I didn't coin these again, but they're super important for success. And I feel so grateful that I have aligned with Les Brown, and these 5 keys to success are his mantra. You can't go on the internet and listen to anything that he talks about with any of his videos or his speeches without hearing these 5 points. So I'm going to go ahead and sport my inner Les. The first one is we have to know that it's possible.
Mhm.
We may not intuitively believe it's possible. I certainly didn't when Mr. King said that to me at that moment. But guess what? I had a grandmother that showed me against all insurmountable odds to me that it's possible. And she did it during the Great Depression. Oh
Mhm.
my gosh.
Mhm.
So, who are the people in your life that can show you that it's possible? Find those people, find mentors that have gone before you. Super
Mhm.
important. So, that's number one.
Mhm.
Number two is it's necessary that we do these things. It was necessary for me. If I wanted to, like you were talking about, Angelina, I had a crossroads. I could have
Mhm.
taken the easy route, but it was necessary for me to stay true to myself and choose a path that was going to be hard to honor who I was and make my
Mhm.
dreams come true.
Mhm.
But it wasn't enough to dream about it. I knew when I hit that college campus, the library was going to be my BFF, highlighters, notebooks, so I could take note. I laugh, I joke, I took notes on my notes. Like I was doing anything because I was an underdog, and I knew that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't go there with a whole bunch of academia underneath me. So it's necessary that you put the work in. It's necessary that you understand what your dreams are so that you can follow them, or they're simply not going to happen.
Mhm.
The third one is it's up to me. I always say Superman never came to save me.
Mhm.
I wanted
Mhm.
him to. Clark Kent was pretty appealing back in the day, right? I know,
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in those shows too, so yes.
right? There
Yeah.
was no Superman.
Uh-huh.
If it's going to be, it's up to me. And I'm reminded of the Olympians right now that we're all watching. Oh my gosh, their trainers can train them all day and all night. And I'm sure they do. But at the end of the day, when they get up on that platform, who's it up to? Not their
Mhm.
trainer. If it's going to be, it's up to me.
Mhm.
The next one is, yep, it's hard. We can do hard things. If we think it's going to be easy, we may fail miserably because life is hard. These
Mhm.
dreams that we have, if they're big enough, it's going to be challenging. It's going to be hard. We need to accept that it's going to be hard and we need to do it hard.
Mhm.
And the last one is understand that it's worth it. And I love this. Tony Robbins talks about it. Les Brown talks about it.
Mhm.
We aren't programmed to go towards pain, right? We
Mhm.
are not pain seekers. We're pleasure seekers.
Right.
We can do stuff that feels bad, but if it's worth it, and we understand it's possible, it's necessary, it's up to me, it's hard, then all those factors can push us through the pain so that we get to the other side if we understand and see that it's worth it.
Mhm.
And again, I'm reminded of the Olympians. Oh my goodness, it has to be worth it for them to get up on that platform and train for what, 4 or 5 years, sometimes their whole life for what, 60 seconds?
Yeah.
60 seconds? I mean,
Mhm.
really, it's over just like that. And
Mhm.
they win a medal or they don't, but goodness gracious, it was worth it for them to get up on that platform and have their moment. So those are the 5 keys that keep me going today. They're the 5 keys that I really teach in my coaching program. And I'm honored to know because life can be hard and it can be painful. But if we're going to really put ourselves out there and want to fulfill our dreams, these things are really important to know and to internalize.
Mhm. Yes. And I totally agree with the 5 steps as well, because you do have to, at the end of it all, believe in yourself. You have to be aware that the only one that's going to get you through it is you. You can take all the training, you can carry all the knowledge, but you're the one that has to deliver. And you have to be willing to do the stuff that's hard. And that's what makes the successful people that we see in life today successful because they're willing to do the things that others are not. Because
Yes.
it's easy. It's easy to say, you know what? Okay, I'll receive this message of I'm going to go into restaurant management because that's the best that I can do. I'll receive it from somebody else and just do it because I mean, it's been done. You've seen your family kind of fall into that step. But for you to step outside of that norm, that comfort zone, so
Yeah.
to say, and say, nah, not me. It's going to be different for me. And then make a total life transformation. I think it's a beautiful story. And I thank you so much for sharing it. Julie, if our listeners want to get in contact with you or they want follow, just to kind of follow up or maybe even getting in one of your coaching sessions, where can they find you? How can they connect?
Okay, well, I'm easily found on Facebook, Julie Duncan. My Facebook page is Empowering Life Coaching. My website is julieduncancoaching.com. I'm on Instagram, Julie Duncan, again, Empowering Life Coaching. I followed all that. That's my brand. So
Mhm.
I'm easily found in any of those platforms. And my website, again, is julieduncancoaching.com.
All right, Julie, and that's how you can get in connection with Julie. Is there any advice or maybe final words you'd like to say before we close our session today?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because in this journey of starting to be guests on podcasts and thinking about Les Brown's teachings, I've kind of stepped back and I said, what if people believed that they were possible?
Hmm.
How would that shift
Mhm.
things for them? Because it was a long journey for me to believe that it was possible for me. I had to follow other people that showed it was possible. What if we internally knew that it was possible for us and we could rise above the ashes? Let's start there because that could change a lot of lives.
Oh my gosh, that's like a world transformation there. Like the idea of that empowerment uh,
Yes.
within the world. I mean, so much would change. So much would
Yes.
change.
Yes.
Love it. I love it. Well, everyone, that is Julie, and this is the show. I am Angelina Mojica, your life coach, sending you much love, much peace, many blessings.